Hello there, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. Tonight we wander to the quiet paths carved by water as it moves across the earth. Rivers begin in places that feel almost secret. A spring hidden in rock, a melt of ancient snow, a trickle of rain gathering into a narrow thread of silver. From those small beginnings they grow into long, patient bodies of water that travel through forests, plains, mountains and valleys. They carry the memory of everything they touch: soil, light, leaves, stone, even the scent of distant weather. Before we begin, take a moment to let your breath soften. Let your shoulders drop. Let your mind loosen its grip on the day. Imagine yourself near a slow river at dusk. The air is cool, the sound is steady. The water moves with a calm intention that never rushes. It drifts around stones. It curls around fallen branches. It reflects the sky in soft ripples that fade as quickly as they form. Standing beside it, you feel the world grow quieter. Rivers shape the land not through force but through constant presence. They carve deep valleys through patience alone. They create new soil with gentle erosion. They carry life to every place they pass. Tonight we will explore the quiet science and soft mysteries of rivers. How they flow, how they guide ecosystems, how they steady the human mind, and why their movement feels so comforting. If you enjoy these peaceful journeys into the gentle side of nature, I invite you to like, subscribe, or simply return whenever you need rest. For now, let yourself settle deeper into calm. Listen to the imagined sound of water drifting past. Let it carry you into stillness. Let's begin. There are rivers that begin with a single drop of water sliding out of melting snow or rising from deep underground springs. That first drop feels small to us, yet it carries the quiet intention of the entire river that will grow from it. As the trickle becomes a stream and the stream becomes something wider, the water never struggles. It simply follows gravity, following the gentle slope of the land. In this, rivers remind us that every vast and powerful thing begins in stillness. The softness at their origin is part of their strength. Some rivers move across landscapes so slowly that their flow feels more like a breath than a current. They drift through meadows and forests in long, winding curves that look like the handwriting of the earth. This slow movement creates calm water where fish gather, insects hover, and birds rest along the banks. Every bend in the river is formed not by force but by the gentle give and take between water and soil. In this relationship, the land shapes the river and the river shapes the land. It is a partnership built on patience. There are rivers that glow in golden light during sunrise, when the first touch of day turns the surface into a shimmering ribbon. The soft colours reflect in slow waves, moving across the water like drifting memories. At these moments, it feels as though the river is carrying the morning itself downstream. The ripples catch the light and scatter it, creating a glow that feels alive. This quiet transformation happens every day, yet it remains one of nature's most peaceful wonders. Some rivers carve deep canyons through stone that is millions of years old. This carving happens so slowly that no single human lifetime could ever witness the full change. Yet the river continues its work without urgency, smoothing rock grain by grain. Over time, the canyon becomes a record of patience. Every layer of exposed stone is a chapter of Earth's past, revealed not by violence but by steady persistence. The river shows us that softness can reshape even the hardest materials. There are rivers so clear that you can see smooth stones beneath the surface, each one shaped by countless years of gentle polishing. The clarity comes from the river's natural filtration through sand and gravel before it reaches open air. Looking into such water feels like looking into a calm mind. Everything beneath it appears softened, quiet and undisturbed. The river offers transparency not to show off, but because clarity is simply what happens when there is nothing hurried within it. Some rivers carry the sound of movement in a way that comforts the nervous system. The steady hum of flowing water creates a natural white noise that quiets mental activity. It is a sound that has existed since the beginning of the world. Long before human voices or cities or machines, the earth sounded like rivers. That familiarity lives deep in us. When we hear water flowing, the body relaxes because it recognizes something ancient and dependable. There are rivers that support entire forests along their edges. The soil near the banks becomes rich with life, nourishing trees that lean toward the water for light and moisture. These forests become green corridors filled with birds, insects, and mammals that depend on the river's presence. Even when the water is quiet, its influence is vast. It sustains life quietly, not by demanding attention, but by simply being there, always moving, always giving. Some rivers change colour depending on the sky above them, becoming silver under clouds, blue under clear skies, and red or orange during sunset. This shifting palette is not the river changing itself, but the river reflecting the world. It becomes a moving mirror of weather and light. Watching these colour changes is like watching time flow across water. The river does not decide what to reflect. It accepts each passing moment with grace. There are rivers that create soft mist in early morning air. When cool night meets warmer water, small droplets rise and drift above the surface, turning the river into a dreamlike scene. Trees appear hazy, sound becomes muted, and the world feels suspended. Walking near such a river at dawn feels like stepping into a memory. The mist wraps the senses in quiet and lets the mind breathe softly. And there are rivers that, even in stillness, carry motion within them. Beneath the surface, currents twist and swirl gently. Leaves float slowly. Fish glide without effort. The movement is subtle but present. A river reminds us that change does not have to be fast to be real. Even the softest current moves forward, reshaping the world one moment at a time. There are rivers that hold layers of temperature within their water, creating an invisible gradient from warm surface water to cooler depths below. If you were to place your hand into the flow, you would feel the warmth fade gently as your fingers sink deeper. Fish sense these layers with remarkable sensitivity and choose the level that suits their needs. Some rest in cool zones where energy is saved and the body feels sheltered. Others drift into warmer layers where the sunlight nourishes plants just beneath the surface. The river becomes a living tapestry of temperatures, each layer offering comfort to a different kind of life. This quiet complexity moves constantly but never feels chaotic, and it shows how even the simplest body of water holds rich and peaceful structure. Some rivers create small islands as they flow, gathering silt and sand in places where the current slows. These islands rise gradually until grasses root and trees take hold. Over time, they become entire micro-worlds, complete with insects, birds, and small animals that treat the island as a sanctuary. The river surrounds these places with a continuous gentle embrace, shaping them without ever stopping their growth. These islands feel like pauses in the river's journey, places where nature breathes and lingers. Their existence reminds us that stillness and movement can exist side by side without conflict. There are rivers that become home to migrating fish which return every year to the very place where they were born. Guided by scent and instinct, they swim upstream against currents that would exhaust most creatures. Their determination is steady rather than frantic. They move with slow strength, resting in the shadows of rocks and rising again when ready. The river holds their story within its waters, carrying the memory of their journeys year after year. Watching them move reminds us that persistence can be quiet and that life often circles back to its origin with purpose and grace. Some rivers create gentle resonance in the air as they travel through narrow canyons or between steep walls of rock. The sound deepens and becomes a low echo that lingers after each splash of water. This echo adds a second layer to the river's voice, a deeper hum that settles softly into the chest when you hear it. The canyon amplifies the sound in a way that feels ancient, as though the earth itself is humming alongside the water. It creates a space where sound becomes a blanket, holding the listener in calm vibration. There are rivers that change their shape over seasons. expanding in spring when snow melts and contracting in summer when heat dries the land. The river never resists these changes. It grows when the world offers abundance and narrows when the world becomes quiet. This natural breathing of the river across the year reveals a gentle acceptance of time. Nothing in the river's journey is rigid. It teaches us that adaptation can be soft and that change can be welcomed rather than feared. Some rivers run through rainforests where the canopy above turns the light soft and green. Sunbeams fall through leaves like thin golden threads, and the river carries these colours along its surface. The trees lean inward as if protecting the water, and the river responds by slowing its pace, flowing in wide, calm curves. The air grows heavy with moisture and the water reflects the deep greenery like a moving mirror. It feels as though the river is guiding the forest, and the forest is guiding the river, each shaping the other in a long and quiet conversation. There are rivers that create natural pools, places where the flow slows so much that the water becomes glass-like. These pools reflect the sky with perfect clarity. When you look into them, you see clouds floating beneath the surface and treetops reaching downward. The boundary between above and below dissolves, and the world feels doubled and softened. Animals come to drink at these calm edges and insects skate lightly across the surface without sinking. The pool becomes a still heart within the moving river, a moment of rest held gently within constant motion. Some rivers carry minerals that colour the water in soft hues. Iron gives warm amber tones, limestone creates pale turquoise, and volcanic minerals produce deep greens or milky blues. These colours shift with sunlight and clouds, creating a living palette across the river's surface. The water becomes a kind of moving light, glowing differently throughout the day. People who visit these rivers often feel a sense of quiet wonder because the colours seem almost dreamlike, as if the river is painting the world in motion. There are rivers that split into many channels across wide plains, weaving through the land like countless threads of silver. These braided rivers shift paths gently over time, creating new channels while closing old ones. From above, they look like delicate patterns carved into the earth. Their many arms move with slow intention, always searching for easier passage. This wandering flow feels peaceful rather than lost, showing that a path does not need to be straight to be purposeful. And there are rivers that feel ancient even if their waters are always new. The water flowing before you may be only hours or days old, yet the river's shape has existed for centuries or millennia. The river is both young and old at the same time, constantly renewing itself while carrying the memory of everything it has ever touched. To sit beside such a river is to feel time itself slow down, as though the water holds a story that began long before you arrived and will continue long after you leave. There are rivers that run beneath the surface of the earth, flowing quietly through limestone caverns where no sunlight reaches. These underground rivers move with an almost sacred stillness, their surfaces untouched by wind, their currents shaped only by stone and time. In these deep chambers, the water becomes unbelievably clear, because nothing disturbs it. The ceiling above may shimmer with tiny droplets, and the space feels like a hidden world preserved from the noise of the surface. These rivers teach us that life and motion continue even when unseen, and that some of the most peaceful places on earth exist beyond ordinary sight. Some rivers form gentle sandbars that shift slowly from season to season. These sandbars are shaped by the river's patient sorting of grains, placing heavier particles in one area and lighter ones in another. Over time, these soft, glowing patches of earth rise above the water and then disappear again when the river decides it needs more space. Animals walk across them, plants sometimes sprout along their edges, and birds rest there as they travel across the sky. Sandbars are temporary, delicate and quiet, yet they feel like small gifts from the river, offered briefly before they slip back beneath the flow. There are rivers that sing through stones, creating soft notes as water moves across rocks of different shapes and sizes. When the current is gentle and steady, every stone adds a tiny voice to the overall murmur. The sound becomes layered, textured, and deeply soothing. It is not loud, yet it fills the air in a way that feels complete. This natural music has no beginning or end, only continuous harmony. People who sit near such rivers often feel their thoughts slowing to match the rhythm of the sound, allowing the mind to drift into a state of quiet ease. Some rivers carry fallen leaves for long distances, turning them slowly in the current until their edges soften and their colours change. These leaves do not struggle against the flow, they simply allow themselves to be carried. Their journey is gentle and unhurried, shifting from shaded pools into open sunlit stretches. Watching them drift reminds us that surrender can be peaceful, and that being carried by a larger movement does not mean losing one's identity. The leaf remains itself even as the river guides it along a new path. There are rivers that meet the ocean in wide, calm estuaries where salt water and fresh water blend in slow, swirling patterns. These places are some of the richest ecosystems on Earth, filled with reeds, birds, fish, and tiny organisms that thrive in the mixture of waters. The tide moves in and out, pulling the river gently back and forth. The estuary becomes a place where two worlds meet without conflict, where boundaries blur and life flourishes in the softness of transition. The river shows that blending can be beautiful and that harmony can be found at the edges between things. Some rivers create deep pools at the base of waterfalls, where the falling water shapes stone into smooth circular basins. These pools look like natural bowls carved by time. The water within them swirls slowly after its fast descent, calming itself before joining the main flow again. These basins hold a sense of renewal, as if the river pauses to gather itself before continuing onward. The air there is cool, the sound is steady, and the surface of the water often shimmers with a faint silver light created by constant movement. There are rivers that glow softly at night when moonlight touches their surface. The gentle ripples catch the light in long, stretched reflections that seem to flow with the water. In darkness, the river becomes a moving ribbon of pale silver, guiding the eye along its path. Sometimes the glow reveals rocks beneath the surface or outlines the curve of the riverbank. Walking beside a moonlit river feels like being inside a dream, where light and motion blend into one quiet scene that lingers in memory long after morning arrives. Some rivers host birds that skim across the surface to catch insects, barely touching the water with the tips of their wings. The birds move with such precision that the water seems undisturbed, even as they glide above it. Their motion is smooth, delicate, and synchronized with the river's own pace. Watching them at dusk when the air cools and the world softens creates a sense of silent companionship between air and water. The river becomes a stage where flight and flow exist in perfect accord. There are rivers that shift their course over centuries, slowly migrating across open plains. They erode one bank gently and build up the opposite side, moving their entire channel inch by inch over long stretches of time. Villages, trees, and fields adapt to the river's wandering nature. What seems still in the short view is actually subtle motion unfolding across generations. This patient migration reveals that the earth itself is always changing, but in rhythm so slow and graceful that we often forget to notice. And there are rivers that hold a memory of every place they have touched. Minerals from mountains, scents from forests, warmth from sunlight, and coolness from deep springs, all carried within the flowing water in ways we cannot see. When you touch a river, you touch the history of its journey, the landscapes it has visited, the seasons it has crossed. This continuity creates a sense of connection to places far upstream, reminding us that water does not belong to one moment or one place. It is part of a larger story, always moving and always renewing. There are rivers that wind through ancient forests where the trees are older than recorded history. The branches stretch outward like open arms, and their roots reach deep into the soil, touching water that has flowed beneath them for centuries. As the river moves between these great trunks, it carries with it small fragments of the forest, a fallen leaf, a bit of bark, a hint of earthy scent. The trees lean toward the water as if listening to its story. The river in turn mirrors the canopy above in slow, shimmering patterns. In these places, time feels thick and gentle, as if the river is cradling the memories of countless seasons. Some rivers gather rain from storms that form miles away. Rainfall on distant mountains or plains slowly trickles into tiny channels, then into streams, and finally into the main river. What feels chaotic in a storm becomes calm once it enters the river's body. The river absorbs this sudden rush of water without fear, spreading it gently across its length. It is as though the river takes the storm's energy and transforms it into something peaceful, smoothing its edges until the water moves in harmony once again. This quiet transformation shows the river's gift for turning intensity into serenity. There are rivers that create natural steps in the land, moving from one level to the next through small cascades. These cascades are not loud waterfalls, but gentle tiers where water slips down stone ledges and soft vales. Each step creates its own miniature ecosystem, home to mosses that cling to damp rock and insects that dance above the surface. Standing near such cascades feels like standing next to the heartbeat of the landscape. The steady rhythm of water falling in small drops creates a soothing pulse that calms the mind. Some rivers travel through open grasslands, where the wind moves the surface of the water in long, delicate waves. The river reflects the sky above so perfectly that clouds seem to drift inside the water. In these wide places, the river feels intimately connected to the sky, carrying pieces of heaven across the land. Watching this reflection makes the world appear doubled, as though the river carries a second sky beneath the first. This quiet illusion gives the landscape a feeling of spaciousness that is deeply calming. There are rivers that split into many small channels and then rejoin again farther downstream. These branching paths create a lace-like pattern across the land, guiding water in intricate loops. Such rivers are alive with subtle movement, each channel exploring a separate path before merging back into the whole. This constant weaving shows that life does not always move in a straight line. Sometimes it spreads out, explores, circles, and returns. The river reminds us that wandering can still lead to forward motion. Some rivers are lined with stones that have been polished smooth over centuries. These stones often carry soft colours, muted greys, deep greens, warm browns, and their surfaces feel cool and steady to the touch. Water slides over them like silk, swirling around each stone before drifting onward. The stones become silent companions to the river's journey, steadfast and unchanging even as the water changes every moment. Their quiet presence adds a grounding calmness to the riverbank, a reminder that stability and motion can coexist peacefully. There are rivers that carry stories of migration, bringing animals to their banks during certain times of year. Birds follow the river as a natural guide. Deer come to drink at dawn. Even small creatures like frogs and insects gather in the gentle wetlands formed by the river's seasonal rise. The river becomes a meeting place, a gentle thread connecting many lives. The movement of animals alongside the water creates a living rhythm that changes with each season, yet always returns with comforting predictability. Some rivers whisper through reeds and tall grasses that grow along their edges. When wind moves through the grasses, their soft rustling blends with the quiet flow of water. Together they create a layered sound that feels ancient and grounding. The river's voice becomes one with the land and air, forming a natural lullaby that quiets the mind without effort. Listening to this combination is like hearing nature breathe. There are rivers that remain warm throughout the year because they are fed by underground springs rich with geothermal heat. Even in winter, steam rises gently from their surface. Snow melts at the edges, creating soft wisps of vapor that drift upward and vanish. These warm rivers offer sanctuary to fish, birds, and animals seeking comfort during cold months. The warm water feels like a reminder that life can find warmth even in the heart of winter. And there are rivers that hold stillness so deep that it feels sacred. In certain stretches, the current slows almost to nothing, creating a mirror-like surface where every detail of the world above is perfectly reflected. Trees, mountains, clouds, and sky float upside down in the water as if resting. Time seems to pause in these places. The stillness invites reflection not only of the world outside, but of the quiet world inside the mind. Sitting near such a place feels like sitting in the presence of calm itself. There are rivers that move through mountains where the air grows thin and cool. As they travel through narrow passes, the water takes on a deeper tone, almost like a low hum resonating between stone walls. The river carries pieces of the mountains with its small flakes of mineral, grains of ancient rock, tiny hints of elements formed long before humans walked the earth. Each particle drifting within the water is part of a much older story. When you listen to a mountain river, you're hearing the voice of stone softened by time. That sound settles into the chest in a way that feels grounding, as if the weight of ages has been distilled into something gentle. Some rivers create hidden alcoves along their banks where tree roots reach down into the water and carve out small private pockets. These places offer shade, stillness, and protection. Small animals find rest there. Fish linger in the deeper shadows. Even the air feels cooler and safer within these tucked-away corners. Such alcoves feel like the river's quiet thoughts. Small spaces where the pace of life slows and everything inside feels suspended. They remind us that even in constant motion, nature creates pockets of calm. There are rivers that flow beneath hanging gardens, where vines spill downward from cliffs and tree branches lean over the water like green curtains. The river becomes a moving path through living walls of leaves and flowers. Light filters through in soft, dappled patterns, creating shifting mosaics on the surface. The colours change with each hour, from morning gold to afternoon green to twilight blue. Swimming creatures below glide through these colours as though passing through stained glass. The experience is immersive and dreamlike, a reminder that the natural world has layers of beauty that unfold quietly over time. Some rivers have broad floodplains that come alive after heavy rains. These flatlands absorb the overflow and gradually release the water back to the main river, feeding wetlands, nourishing grasses, and creating habitat for thousands of small organisms. The river extends its reach gently, laying down fertile soil across wide areas before retreating back to its core path. This slow give and take creates some of the most productive landscapes in the world. It shows that expansion does not always have to be forceful. It can be a calm offering that brings life. There are rivers that change their meaning depending on the season. In spring, they are energetic and full of youth, carrying snowmelt from high places. In summer, they slow down, shimmering quietly beneath warm sunlight. In autumn, they gather fallen leaves and carry them in soft, swirling clusters. In winter, they sometimes freeze at the edges while the center continues to glide beneath a thin coat of ice. The river shows that life has moods, that movement can reflect the time of year, and that change is part of the rhythm of the world. Some rivers wrap themselves around ancient stones that have stayed in place for thousands of years. The water curves around them, smoothing their surfaces little by little. These stones become markers of endurance, witnesses to everything that has passed through the valley. They stand steady while the river adapts and shifts around them. When you place your hand on such a stone, you're touching something that has felt centuries of water sliding past. The stone has not resisted the river, it has allowed itself to be shaped with grace. There are rivers that lead to deltas where they spread into dozens of branching streams before meeting the sea. These deltas are alive with motion, small channels dividing and merging, carrying silt that creates new land. Birds gather in enormous numbers. Fish swim between brackish pools. The delta is a place of transformation where fresh water and salt water mix, where land and water blend into one continuous landscape. It feels like a threshold between worlds, a place where creation is always happening at a slow and gentle pace. Some rivers contain water so old that it has cycled through the earth many times, rising as vapor, falling as rain, flowing as streams, freezing as snow, and returning once more to the river's embrace. This cycle is ancient and continuous. When you touch the river, you're touching water that once moved through clouds, through glaciers, through other rivers, through the breath of forests. The river carries the memory of all these states, holding pieces of sky and stone in one flowing unity. There are rivers that reflect the evening sky with such clarity that the sunset appears doubled. Clouds turn gold and pink above, and the same colours stretch across the water below. The river becomes a second horizon, holding the end of day in a soft mirror. This reflection makes sunset feel deeper and slower. It is a moment where you sense the sky breathing with the earth, both of them moving into night together. And there are rivers that seem to listen. When wind quiets and animals settle, the river flows with a gentler sound, as if it is aware of the silence around it and adjusts its tone to match. Its movement becomes a whispering presence, steady and calm. Sitting beside such a river at twilight, you feel that the world has softened. The river becomes not just a body of water, but a companion offering steady peace. It reminds the mind that rest is natural, that stillness is safe, and that all things flow toward quiet in time. Some rivers move through forests that are so dense that only thin beams of sunlight reach the water. These beams fall onto the surface in narrow columns that shimmer gently with the river's motion. As the water moves beneath them, the light seems to stretch and ripple as though it has been softened into liquid gold. Birds fly above the canopy, but their shadows glide silently across the river below in slow shapes. The entire scene feels hushed, as if the forest is protecting this hidden pathway. Standing at the river's edge, you feel as though you have entered a cathedral made of leaves and light, where the river serves as the quiet voice of the land. There are rivers that curl through deserts where the air is dry and hot. Their presence feels like an oasis of calm. The edges of the river become lined with reeds, grasses, and small trees that would never exist without the constant water. Animals travel long distances to drink from these narrow bands of life. The contrast between the dry sand and the cool water creates an unusual sense of balance. The river feels like a reminder that softness can survive even in harsh places. Its movement slows the harshness of the desert and creates a sanctuary that the land would otherwise never know. Some rivers are fed by hidden springs deep underground. These springs push clear water upward through layers of rock until it breaks into daylight. The water is often cold and pure, untouched by surface pollution. When it first emerges, it flows with steady purpose, gathering into small pools before beginning its journey downslope. There is something ancient and sacred about a spring-fed river. It feels like a quiet gift from beneath the earth, a reminder that life begins in unseen places and rises slowly into the light. There are rivers that weave through farmland where fields stretch into the distance. The river nourishes crops by soaking the soil and enriching it with minerals carried from upstream. Farmers have relied on these rivers for centuries. Early civilizations flourished because of them. The relationship between river and land is one of partnership rather than domination. The river asks for nothing. It continues its path without concern for ownership or borders. Its gift is steady, patient, and life-sustaining. You can sense this generosity in the breeze that rises from its banks, as if the land is breathing quietly through each blade of grass. Some rivers carry tiny floating seeds from one ecosystem to another. As the seeds drift downstream, they gather in quiet pools where they eventually take root along the banks. Over years, these seeds grow into trees that reshape the landscape. A tree that begins as a small drifting seed can eventually cast shade across the water and provides shelter for birds and animals. The river becomes a silent gardener. It creates forests without planting, spreads life without intention, and shows that growth can begin with the simplest movement of water. There are rivers that carve stone in a slow circular motion known as potholing. Over centuries, swirling currents spin small stones round and round in the same spot until they grind a perfect bowl shape into solid rock. These bowls become smooth and polished like natural sculptures. Some are deep, others shallow. Each one is formed only by the persistence of water. When you see them, you realize how much patience exists within nature. The river does not rush to shape the stone. It simply continues its movement hour after hour, year after year, until stone yields to gentleness. Some rivers glow faintly at night when tiny bioluminescent organisms gather near the surface. These microscopic beings release soft blue light that flickers with the movement of the water. When the river flows through a quiet area, the glow seems to drift like a moving constellation reflected below the surface. The effect is mesmerizing. The river becomes a ribbon of starlight on Earth. Such scenes are rare, but when they happen, they make the world feel enchanted, as though nature has opened a brief doorway into some deeper magic. There are rivers that change colour throughout the year because of the minerals and organisms carried in their waters. During the rainy season, they may turn a rich brown. During drier months, they shine in clearer hues of jade or blue. Some rivers contain special plants that turn sections of their flow into shades of deep red. Each colour reflects a story of the river's journey, what it has touched, what has flowed into it, how the seasons have shaped its path. Watching these subtle shifts can be soothing, like observing the moods of a living being expressed gently over time. Some rivers form channels beneath sheets of ice in winter. Beneath the frozen surface, the water continues its movement in near silence. Those who walk above may hear faint murmurs, a distant humming that feels like the river speaking through the ice. These sounds are soft and steady, and they travel through the cold air with a calming resonance. The river continues its journey even when hidden from sight. It shows that movement never fully stops. It simply adapts and waits for the sun to return. There are rivers that create fog in early morning when warm water meets cool air. The mist rises slowly, curling upward in soft waves that drift across the surface. Trees appear as silhouettes within the haze. Birds glide through the fog with wings that leave faint trails in the air. The whole landscape turns quiet. Fog has a way of making the world feel gentler, as though sound has been cushioned. The river becomes a place where shapes soften, time slows, and everything feels wrapped in a blanket of calm. There are rivers that move through deep valleys carved so long ago that the original mountains above them have already worn down into gentle slopes. These valleys are shaped by millions of years of flowing water, yet the river itself feels eternally young. As it glides through the centre, the walls of the valley rise on each side like guardians who have watched its journey since ancient times. Moss clings to the stone. Ferns grow wherever there is space. When wind moves through the valley, it carries the smell of wet earth and leaves, creating a calm that settles over anyone who walks beside the river. You can feel how old the landscape is, yet the water feels fresh and alive, as if time has learned to balance youth and age in a single place. Some rivers form wide bends so perfect and smooth that they look like slow, deliberate brushstrokes painted across the land. These curves are known as meanders, and they evolve gradually as the river nudges the soft soil beneath it. Over generations, the meanders become more pronounced, drifting across the valley floor like a wandering thought. The pace of this movement is almost imperceptible, but when you look at old maps and compare them to the present, you begin to see how the river has gently rearranged the land. It is a reminder that change does not need to be rushed. Even the slowest movement can reshape a world. There are rivers that sing in ways that seem almost musical. When water flows over stones that differ slightly in size and shape, it produces a soft orchestra of tones. Some areas hum with low notes while others create light, tinkling sounds. The current shifts as if guided by an invisible conductor. This natural melody is soothing in a way that feels instinctive, as though the sound carries something familiar from the early earth. Sitting near such a river can calm the nervous system and steady the breath. It becomes easy to lose track of time and simply fall into the rhythm of the water. Some rivers support entire forests along their banks, not because the trees rely on constant water, but because the river's cycle of seasonal flooding brings rich nutrients that feed new growth. Each flood leaves behind a thin layer of fresh soil filled with minerals carried from far upstream. These deposits help new seedlings sprout and mature into tall trees that form protective canopies. The forest listens to the river and grows in response to its yearly gifts. It is a partnership built on generosity and patience, where the river nourishes the land and the land shelters the river in return. There are rivers that hide small pools of warm water where geothermal springs rise from beneath the ground. These warm pockets feel out of place when the surrounding river is cold, yet they create beautiful contrasts. Fish gather near them. Tiny bubbles rise slowly from the sandy floor. If you dip your hand into the water, you feel the quiet meeting between heat from the Earth's interior and the cool flow of the river. These pockets remind us that even within a single ecosystem, there can be moments of gentle surprise and balance. Some rivers move so quietly during certain seasons that it becomes difficult to tell where the water ends and the air begins. The surface smooths itself into a pale mirror that reflects every detail of the sky. If clouds drift above, they drift below as well. Birds flying low appear twice, once in the air and once in the water. This reflective stillness can make the world feel doubled. It creates an unusual sense of peace, as if you're looking into a portal where sky and river are part of the same calm breath. There are rivers that gather fallen leaves from distant forests and carry them gently downstream. As the leaves drift in clusters, they spin softly in the current, creating patches of colour that move like slow-moving paintings. Some leaves settle in quiet coves where the water barely moves. Others travel for miles. Watching them drift gives the mind a sense of tranquility. Their movement is unhurried. Their journey is effortless. Each leaf becomes part of the river's slow story, adding small touches of beauty to the wider landscape. Some rivers create sandbars shaped by the constant push and pull of water. These sandbars shift slightly each year, forming small temporary islands that birds and animals use for resting places. The river builds these islands grain by grain, always adjusting their shape as the water rises or falls. The sandbars remind us that even the smallest pieces of land have a story shaped by the river's quiet hands. They form, dissolve, and form again, showing that all things are part of a cycle of gentle creation. There are rivers that whisper through tall grass, where reeds sway with the slightest breeze. The movement of the reeds creates its own soft sound, mixing with the flowing water to form a layered calm. Frogs blend into the background with subtle croaks. Dragonflies hover above the surface. Everything moves slowly, as though the entire ecosystem is synchronized with the river's steady rhythm. Simply standing in this environment can bring a sense of deep grounding. The river becomes a quiet companion to the land and the life that surrounds it. And there are rivers that carry the light of dawn in the smoothest way. When sunlight first touches the surface, it spreads across the water like a sheet of pale gold. The river becomes a pathway of morning light that guides the day forward. It feels gentle, warm, and full of promise. Watching this moment can soften even the busiest mind. The river shows that beginnings do not need to be abrupt. They can arrive slowly, just like sunlight creeping across the surface of flowing water. There are rivers that pass through ancient forests where the trees have stood for hundreds or even thousands of years. As the water moves through these old groves, It carries the scent of pine, cedar, and damp earth. Light filters through the branches in soft shafts that flicker gently with the movement of leaves. Birds perch along the banks and listen to the steady flow. In such places, the river feels like part of the forest's heartbeat. It reflects the age of the trees, yet stays endlessly young. When you walk beside it, you feel as though you are moving through layers of time. The river carries the present, the trees carry the past, and together they create a sense of calm that feels ancient and comforting. Some rivers flow beneath cliffs where waterfalls drip down from high ledges in thin, delicate strands. These small falls do not roar like their larger counterparts. Instead, they create a soft, steady, pattering sound as water meets the river below. The air becomes cooler beneath these cliffs, and faint rainbows appear when sunlight slips through the mist. Fish gather near these calm spots because oxygen levels rise slightly where falling water meets the surface. The entire scene feels peaceful and sheltered. The river becomes a place where sound, light, and motion blend into one gentle atmosphere. There are rivers whose surfaces break into patterns of shifting light whenever the wind moves across them. These patterns, known as wavelets, glide across the water like thousands of tiny mirrors catching sunlight. At certain angles, the river shimmers as though covered in scattered diamonds. At others, it darkens into deep blues and greens. Watching these changes can be hypnotic. The light seems alive. It moves without effort, responding to the smallest breeze. The river becomes a canvas that paints itself over and over again, inviting the mind to follow its movements and drift into stillness. Some rivers carry echoes when they flow between tall stone walls. Each sound from the water bounces gently between the rock faces and returns in softened form. These echoes are not sharp. They feel rounded and warm, as though the stone is absorbing the noise and giving it back in a more peaceful tone. When you speak near such a river, your voice returns in a faint whisper. When the water splashes over stones, the sound expands in all directions. This natural acoustics creates a sense of enclosure and safety. The river becomes a chamber of calm where sound moves in gentle circles. There are rivers that nourish long wetlands filled with reeds that sway in slow rhythmic motion. These wetlands act as filters, cleaning the water as it moves through them. Microorganisms remove impurities. Plants absorb nutrients. The river leaves the wetland clearer than when it entered. The reeds create a soft rustling sound that blends perfectly with the flow of water. Birds nest in the tall grasses, and their calls echo across the flat landscape. When you walk along the edges of such wetlands, you can feel the land breathing in harmony with the river. It is a place where cleanliness and calm are created quietly, without machines or noise. Some rivers travel near volcanic regions where hot springs bubble into their edges. The meeting of cold river water and warm mineral water creates swirling patterns that look almost like smoke beneath the surface. The minerals leave delicate white lines along the rocks that outline the history of each rise and fall of the water. While the river continues its journey in cool streams, the springs add a touch of warmth that gathers in shallow pools. These warm pockets feel inviting and mysterious at the same time. They hint at the deep forces inside the earth while blending seamlessly with the river's gentle flow. There are rivers that hold entire underwater forests of aquatic plants, long strands of green that sway with the movements of the current. These plants rise and fall as the water pushes past them, creating a silent choreography beneath the surface. Sunlight filters down in beams, illuminating the plants in shifting patterns. Fish weave through this underwater world as though moving through tall grass. The effect is calming, almost hypnotic. It is easy to imagine the river dreaming through these quiet motions, its life continuing beneath the surface in slow waves of green and gold. Some rivers form natural steps in the stone, creating a series of miniature cascades. Each step catches the flow and releases it with a soft splash. Together, these cascades create a layered melody of water sounds, from gentle trickles to deeper tones. The pattern is repetitive yet never exactly the same. The river arranges its own music through motion alone. Sitting near these stepping stone formations can feel deeply soothing. The sound fills the air in a steady rhythm that settles into the body like a slow heartbeat. There are rivers that create narrow passageways through dense vegetation, where branches arch overhead and create natural tunnels. Inside these tunnels, the air becomes cooler and the light becomes softer. Water slows slightly as it passes through, creating ripples that glide along the edges of the channel. These tunnels feel like hidden corridors carved by time and patience. They offer a sense of seclusion, as though the river is guiding you through its private pathways. Moving through such places brings a sense of peace, as if you have stepped into a secret held gently by nature. And there are rivers that flow alongside wide open fields where the wind moves freely. These fields reflect their mood back onto the river. On calm days, the water glides smoothly, reflecting the sky with perfect clarity. On breezy days, soft ripples form little waves that sparkle in the sun. At sunrise, the river catches the first light. At sunset, it carries the colours of the sky as though pulling the day toward night. In these open landscapes, the river feels connected to the horizon. It becomes a long, quiet line that guides the eye across the land and reminds the mind that there is always space to breathe. Some rivers move through mountain meadows where the grass grows tall and soft and bends gently in the breeze. As the river passes through these open spaces, it spreads out slightly and becomes shallower. Sunlight reaches the riverbed and lights up the stones beneath, making them glow in shades of amber and grey. The air is warm. The hum of distant insects blends with the slow movement of water. In these meadows, the river feels almost playful. It curves gently back and forth, following the natural contours of the land. The simplicity of the scene has a calming effect. The river seems relaxed, as though taking a breath before beginning its journey into deeper valleys. There are rivers that pause in wide basins, where the land dips just enough to create natural pools. These pools are deeper than the river around them, and the water slows to a near stillness. Beneath the surface, fish glide in wide arcs. The bottom becomes smooth from the constant settling of fine sand. The surface reflects the world above with perfect clarity. When wind brushes across these pools, the ripples move outward in soft concentric circles that take their time to fade. These basins act like the river's moments of meditation. They give the flowing water a quiet space to rest before continuing forward. Some rivers create thin sheets of water that glide over flat expanses of stone. The water is so shallow in these areas that the current becomes almost invisible. It spreads out across the rock like a layer of moving glass. Sunlight glints off the surface. The sound is faint and peaceful, like fabric gently brushing against itself. These gliding sections of the river highlight the delicate side of water. They show how fluid can become as gentle as air when the landscape allows it. Standing near these smooth flow zones, you feel as though time has slowed to match the river's pace. There are rivers that gather mist during early morning hours. As warm water meets cool air, soft clouds rise just above the surface. The mist blurs the edges of the landscape. Trees appear as faint outlines. The river becomes a quiet ribbon of silver beneath a drifting veil of pale grey. Even sound seems muted. Birds call softly. Water moves in a patient whisper. The mist creates a dreamlike world where shapes lose their sharp edges and everything feels softened. Walking along the bank at this hour is like stepping into a memory that has not fully formed. The river becomes a guide through this calm and quiet haze. Some rivers host birds that skim across the surface, barely brushing the water with the tips of their wings. These birds travel long distances and use the river as a pathway. When they pass overhead, their reflections glide beneath them in perfect synchrony. The delicate contact between wing and water creates light ripples that drift outward. This graceful interaction between bird and river makes the landscape feel alive in a soft and elegant way. It reminds the mind that movement can be effortless, and beauty can arise from the gentlest touch. There are rivers that flow beneath towering stone arches formed by thousands of years of erosion. These natural bridges create cool, shaded passageways where the air feels different. The river echoes softly beneath the arch, creating a gentle resonance that seems to come from all directions at once. Light filters through the opening in patches, creating moving patterns on the water. Passing under a stone arch feels like entering a quiet sanctuary where the river has carved a hidden room for itself over time. The sense of shelter and stillness is unmistakable. Some rivers host long strands of algae that drift with the motion of the current. These strands shimmer in sunlight and sway slowly like underwater meadows. As the water moves, the algae bend and rise in smooth waves. Fish swim between them, shadows shift in calming rhythms. This underwater movement is almost hypnotic. It shows that even below the surface, where most people never look, the river is full of gentle life shaped by the current's touch. Watching this motion can soften even the most restless thoughts. There are rivers that form small whirlpools when they curve sharply or meet an obstacle. These whirlpools are slow and steady rather than forceful. Leaves drifting on the surface circle several times before being released back into the main flow. The circular motion is consistent and calming. It feels like nature tracing soft spirals into the water. Standing near one of these natural spirals, you can sense the quiet balance between movement and stillness. The whirlpool never hurries, it simply maintains its rhythm until the river shifts again. Some rivers produce a faint glow during sunset when the water picks up warm colours from the sky. As the sun lowers, the river transitions from pale gold to rose pink and finally into deep blue. These colour changes happen gradually, blending softly from one tone to another. Wildlife grows quieter. The surface becomes smoother. The river carries the last light of day with a kind of reverence, almost as though it is escorting the sun into the night. Watching this shift can create a deep sense of peace. And there are rivers that bend around ancient boulders that have remained in place for centuries. The water splits around these stones and rejoins on the other side in a unified flow. The sound created by this division and reunion is gentle and soothing. The boulder stands firm while the river adapts to its presence. This interaction reflects how nature balances strength and softness. The stone remains unmoved. The water moves without resistance. Together they create a scene that feels stable yet fluid, grounding yet calming. There are rivers that stretch across wide plains where the sky dominates the horizon in every direction. In these open landscapes, the river becomes a silver line weaving gently through endless grass. The wind sweeps across the plains and moves the grass in long waves that travel toward the river. When these waves meet the water, they create a soft merging of sound, wind above blending with water below. The river reflects the open sky in long shimmering strips that shift slowly with the breeze. Standing beside such a river can make you feel very small yet deeply at peace, as though the earth is reminding you of its vastness and its calm. Some rivers have sections where the water becomes so clear that it appears almost invisible. In these places, the stones on the riverbed look close enough to touch, even when they lie many feet below. Fish glide through the transparent water, with movements so smooth that they seem to float in air. Sunlight reaches the bottom and illuminates it in soft gradients of colour. These clear water stretches feel pure and quiet. They allow you to see the river's inner world without distortion. Watching this hidden world beneath the surface can steady the breath and calm the mind. There are rivers that meet the ocean in gentle estuaries where salt water and fresh water blend in slow, swirling layers. These estuaries form some of the richest habitats on Earth. Birds gather in enormous flocks. Fish travel between the sea and the river. Grasses rise from shallow water and sway with the tide. The river slows as it reaches this final threshold, as if taking its time before joining the vastness of the ocean. The meeting of river and sea feels like a soft embrace, a merging of two great bodies of water that have moved through different worlds to reach one another. Some rivers bend in graceful arcs that mirror the curves of the land around them. These natural shapes are pleasing to the eye and soothing to the mind because they follow the earth's own rhythm. The river does not force its way through the land. It adapts to every rise and fall, creating curves that look effortless. When you observe these sweeping bends from above, you can see how the river has shaped the land with patience alone. It becomes clear that nature builds harmony not through speed but through constant gentle movement. There are rivers that pass through old abandoned towns where remnants of past life sit quietly along their banks. Worn bridges, crumbling walls, and faded pathways show where people once lived. The river continues to flow past them, unchanged by time. It brings a sense of continuity to places that have fallen silent. The movement of water beside these forgotten structures feels like a reminder that life keeps going even when the world changes. The river becomes the storyteller of the landscape, carrying memories forward through the years. Some rivers hold hidden caves along their sides where water has carved out chambers beneath the surface. Inside these caves, the air is cool and still. The sound of the river outside echoes softly through the stone. Stalactites form slowly over centuries, one drop of water at a time. When light enters these caves through small openings, it creates ethereal beams that illuminate the rock formations. These river caves feel untouched by the outside world. They create a sense of entering a place where time moves differently, slow and steady like the heartbeat of the earth. There are rivers that become nearly silent during winter when ice forms along the edges. The flowing water retreats to the center, moving quietly beneath the frozen surface. Frost forms delicate patterns along the banks. Snow gathers on nearby branches and softens the entire soundscape. Standing near the river at this time feels like standing inside a moment suspended in time. The hurried noises of the world fade away. The river continues to flow, but its voice becomes soft and muted. This winter calm feels deeply restful. Some rivers have small sections where water drips from hanging roots and overhanging branches, creating patterns of movement on the surface. These drops form circular ripples that expand gently outward. When many drops fall together, the river becomes covered in overlapping circles that move slowly across the water. Watching these ripples is mesmerizing. Each circle spreads with perfect smoothness until it fades back into the river. The motion is simple but soothing, a quiet reminder that tiny movements can create beauty. There are rivers that glow beneath the moonlight, reflecting its soft silver light along their surface. As the moon climbs higher, the river becomes a moving ribbon of pale brightness cutting through the darkness. The night sky mirrors itself in the water, and stars shimmer across the surface whenever the current shifts. The scene feels peaceful, in a way that daylight cannot replicate. The river at night becomes a quiet guide through the landscape, carrying light wherever it goes. And there are rivers that end in wide deltas where they split into many smaller branches and spread across a broad region before finally reaching the sea. These deltas are ever-changing worlds shaped by the river's gentle push. They hold winding channels, islands made of silt, and vast stretches of calm water. The river does not rush through this final stage. It takes its time, dividing and rejoining in a natural choreography. Watching a delta from above reveals the river's last gift to the landscape, a place where land and water blend into one peaceful whole. Some rivers flow through regions where the soil is rich with clay. When the river touches this clay, it softens it slowly and carries tiny particles downstream. Over time, the clay forms gentle curves and shelves along the banks. These smooth shapes feel like the work of an artist with endless patience. The river sculpts the land not with force but with careful repetition. Each rise and fall in water level creates new patterns, and every pattern holds the history of flowing water. Walking along these clay banks, you feel the softness beneath your feet and it becomes easy to sense how steady motion can carve beauty without noise or struggle. There are rivers that hold ancient driftwood carried from far upstream. These pieces of wood have been polished by years of immersion, their rough edges softened into rounded forms. Some drift for hundreds of miles before settling along a bend or getting caught between stones. The wood carries a quiet story of forests and storms and seasons long past. When sunlight touches the wet surface of driftwood, it shines with a dark glow that speaks of age and endurance. The river keeps these relics in gentle motion, turning them slowly in the current, like artifacts on display in nature's quiet museum. Some rivers form long sand shoals where the water becomes shallow and the pace of flow slows dramatically. These shoals shift slightly each year as currents deposit new layers of fine sand. The shoals often become resting places for animals that seek warmth from the sun. As the river laps gently against the edges, it creates a faint rhythmic sound. This steady lapping, combined with the warm sand and open sky, creates a comforting atmosphere. The shoals remind us that even in a world shaped by movement, there are peaceful pauses where nature rests without stopping. There are rivers that carry minerals from far mountains, minerals that tint the water in subtle ways. Some take on faint colours like teal, olive green, or smoky blue depending on the stone upstream. These colours shift with the seasons and sunlight, giving the river moods that vary gently throughout the year. These natural hues create scenes that feel almost painted. When the colour deepens in late afternoon, the river can look like a long brushstroke of soft pigment stretching across the land. The subtle gradients soothe the eyes and calm the mind, inviting you to linger in the moment. Some rivers are known for their quiet eddies, small circular motions where the water rotates slowly in place. These eddies form behind rocks or along wider bends where the current hesitates. Leaves gather in these circles and spin gently without drifting away. The motion is steady and hypnotic. Looking at an eddy can feel like watching the river think. The circular motion reflects an inner stillness within the constant flow. It becomes easy to settle your breath in rhythm with the spin, letting the eddy guide the mind into a peaceful loop. There are rivers that grow noticeably wider after heavy rain, yet remain calm on the surface. The water rises gradually, spreading outward to cover flat banks and newly formed channels. Even though the volume of water increases dramatically, the surface often remains smooth and reflective. These moments show the quiet power of rivers. They adapt without chaos, expanding and adjusting with gentle control. You can stand near the rising water and feel a sense of balance, as if the river understands how to hold the extra weight with grace. Some rivers create patterns of light on the underside of bridges as the sun reflects off the surface. These patterns move in slow waves and give the stone or wood above a gentle shimmering effect. If you look upward from beneath the bridge, you see these wavering lights dancing softly on the ceiling. The sound of water amplifies slightly under the arch, blending with the shifting light to create a peaceful environment. Many people find that the calmest place along a river is beneath a bridge where the light and sound work together to soothe the senses. There are rivers that create temporary islands made of silt after floodwaters recede. These islands appear almost overnight, rising from shallow sections and offering new space for plants to grow. Birds land on them, small seeds take root. Some islands last only a few weeks, others remain for years. The river builds these islands out of small offerings accumulated over time. Watching them form and disappear is like observing the river breathe. Each island marks a moment in the river's ongoing conversation with the land. Some rivers flow close to limestone cliffs where mineral-rich water drips down the rock face. Over centuries, these minerals create delicate terraces and thin sheets of crystal that cling to the stone. When sunlight touches these crystal layers, they refract light in small rainbow fragments. These hidden rainbows appear briefly and disappear when clouds pass, turning the cliff into a soft display of colour. The river continues beneath this quiet show, carrying the sound of flowing water that blends with the faint sparkle above. The whole scene feels gentle and otherworldly. And there are rivers that carry the faint scent of forests, mountains, or distant rain depending on the regions they pass through. Each section of the river collects subtle fragrances that drift across the surface. Sometimes the water smells of pine needles. Other times it carries the sweetness of wildflowers or the clean freshness of melting snow. These scents move with the current and soften as they travel. When you breathe them in, you sense the journey the river has taken. The water becomes a carrier of memory, delivering small impressions of faraway places with every slow breath you take. There are rivers that move through wide valleys where the land opens like a cradle around the water. In these places, the river slows and spreads, its surface becoming wide enough to mirror entire clouds drifting overhead. When the wind quiets, the water turns into a sheet of pale light, holding the sky gently on its back. Birds glide across this mirror, their reflections following them perfectly for several moments before dissolving into ripples. Sitting beside such a river, you feel the space expand around you. The open valley and the slow water create a sense of deep quiet that makes the whole world feel softer. Some rivers carve narrow passages between walls of rock that rise steeply above them. As the river slides through these stone corridors, it moves with a focused, steady energy. The sound becomes deeper and more resonant, echoing along the rock surfaces in a way that feels grounding. Moss grows wherever moisture settles, creating soft green patches that cling to the stone. In these narrow places, the river feels ancient, as though it has been shaping its path through the rock for thousands of years. The slow persistence of water against stone creates a feeling of timeless patience. There are rivers that create shallow shelves of stone beneath their surface. These shelves cause the water to ripple gently as it glides across them. The ripples create shifting patterns that move with the grace of silk in a soft breeze. Light bends through the water and dances along the stones in shimmering lines. Fish drift above these shelves, barely moving their fins, letting the current carry them. The scene has a quiet elegance. Watching these patterns can relax the mind in an instant because the movement is simple and soothing. Some rivers receive the runoff from distant storms long before the sky above them changes. Even when the sun is shining, the river may rise slightly or become cooler as stormwater arrives from many miles upstream. This delayed connection feels mysterious, as though the river is sensing weather happening far away. The idea that storms and sunlight can touch the same river at different moments gives the landscape a layered feeling. The river becomes a messenger carrying the memory of distant rainfall through clear and calm weather. There are rivers that twist around clusters of old trees whose roots stretch deep into the soil. These roots hold the banks firmly in place, creating small alcoves where the water slows to a gentle drift. In these alcoves, insects skim the surface and frogs rest on damp stones. The trees lean slightly over the water as if listening to the flow. Their leaves rustle softly. The river and the trees seem to exist in quiet partnership. The roots anchor the land and the river nourishes the soil. This harmony brings a sense of balance that feels peaceful to anyone nearby. Some rivers host patches of floating vegetation that drift along with the current. These floating mats move slowly and shift their shape as they encounter small obstacles. Tiny flowers bloom on them. Insects land briefly and lift off again. When sunlight touches these mats, their colours brighten into greens and yellows that reflect softly onto the water below. The sight of this drifting plant life makes the river feel alive in a gentle, unobtrusive way. It becomes easy to fall into a slow rhythm, simply watching the plants move. There are rivers that occasionally reveal hidden stones when the water level drops after a long dry period. These stones may have been covered for months or even years. Once revealed, they show smooth surfaces shaped by countless seasons of flowing water. Their colours vary from deep grey to warm brown to soft silver. Some contain faint lines that mark the slow passage of time. When the river rises again, these stones return to their quiet work beneath the surface. Seeing them appear and disappear reminds you that the river is constantly changing even when the change is nearly invisible. Some rivers carry the songs of insects that gather near the water during certain times of day. Their wings hum together in a soft chorus that blends with the sound of flowing water. This combined music fills the air and blankets the landscape in a gentle calm. Sometimes the hum rises, sometimes it fades into near silence. The river continues its steady motion beneath this shifting soundscape. The harmony between insects and water makes the environment feel alive but not busy. Instead, it brings a sense of natural peace. There are rivers that travel through regions shaped by wind. Fine grains of sand collect along the banks, forming delicate patterns that resemble ripples even though they were created by air rather than water. The river meets these sandy banks with slow, steady movement. The contrast between wind-carved patterns on land and water-shaped patterns on the surface creates a quiet dialogue between two natural forces. Watching the river move beside these patterned banks can feel calming in its perfect simplicity. And there are rivers that create faint vibrations you can feel through the ground when you sit close to the edge. These vibrations are soft pulses created by the movement of water against stone and soil. If you rest your hand on the ground, you can sense the river's quiet heartbeat. This subtle rhythm connects you physically to the flow. It reminds you that water is never truly still and that the earth carries this movement in gentle waves. Feeling these vibrations can lull the mind into deep rest, as though the river is sharing its steady, grounding presence with you. Some rivers move through places where the sunlight filters through wide canopies of leaves and touches the surface in soft, trembling shapes. These bright patches drift gently with the current, forming patterns that appear and disappear in quiet rhythm. The river becomes a moving mosaic of light and shadow. Every shift in the canopy creates a new design that lasts only for a moment before blending into the next. Watching this soft exchange between sunlight and water can quiet the mind in a way few experiences can. It feels like the river is silently painting with light. There are rivers that flow across ancient floodplains, where the soil is rich and dark from centuries of gentle overflow. During heavy rains, the river rises and spreads thin layers of silt across these fields, renewing the land in a calm and natural cycle. When the water returns to its banks, the floodplain glows with new life. Plants grow taller, colours deepen, animals gather in greater numbers. This peaceful renewal happens year after year without noise or rush. It shows how nature restores itself through patience, leaving behind landscapes that feel steady and fertile. Some rivers wind through canyons so deep that sunlight reaches the water only for a short time each day. When the light finally arrives, it reflects off the river in narrow, shimmering bands that seem almost otherworldly. The walls of the canyon glow softly in warm tones where the reflected light touches them. The moment is brief but beautiful. When the sun sets behind the cliffs, the river returns to a cool blue calm. This cycle of shadow and light gives the canyon river a quiet rhythm that feels ancient and meditative. There are rivers that shift their paths slightly each year, leaving behind old channels that fill with still water. These abandoned channels become peaceful ponds where frogs and dragonflies find a home. The water rests quietly as the main river continues nearby. These calm side pools hold reflections that remain unbroken for long periods, offering a stillness the river itself cannot maintain. They act like resting places in the river's long journey, calm mirrors that remind you that even flowing water has moments of complete pause. Some rivers run near meadows filled with wildflowers, and when wind passes across the land, it carries their faint scent to the water's edge. The river picks up this fragrance and spreads it gently along its path. As you stand by the river, you can smell tiny hints of flowers mixed with the freshness of moving water. This blend feels soothing and clean. It reminds you of how connected every part of the landscape is. Even flowers growing far from the bank can shape the experience of the river in quiet ways. There are rivers that create wide, gentle ripples when they pass over sections of smooth stone. These ripples stretch outward in long, even lines that glide across the surface with perfect consistency. When sunlight touches them, the ripples take on a soft silver sheen. Watching these slow lines of movement can calm the mind like a lullaby. Each ripple seems to breathe. Each wave appears to settle the landscape into a deeper sense of quiet. The river becomes a moving meditation where the smallest motions bring the greatest sense of peace. Some rivers pass close to open marshlands where reeds grow tall and move in steady waves. When wind passes across these marshes, the reeds sway and create a soft whispering sound that merges with the river's flow. The sound is gentle and layered. Birds hide in the tall grass and add occasional calls that blend seamlessly with the landscape. These marshy edges create a sanctuary where the river feels protected and embraced by life. Standing here can feel like being wrapped in sound that soothes without overwhelming. There are rivers that move beneath long stretches of sky, where clouds drift slowly overhead. As the clouds approach, the reflections shift across the water and create the illusion of a moving sky on the surface. Some clouds stretch across wide distances and appear as long, luminous streaks. Others appear soft and rounded, gently scattering their shapes across the river. This meeting between sky and water brings a sense of connection to the world above and the world below. The river becomes a moving canvas for the passing day, holding each moment gently and letting it go with equal ease. Some rivers form shallow crossings, where the water spreads thinly across flat stones. These places allow animals and even people to pass through the river without sinking deeply. The sound in these crossings is low and rhythmic, a quiet wash of water over smooth rock. The stones feel cool underfoot, the air feels calm. These crossings remind you that rivers, despite their constant movement, create ways to connect both sides of the land. Nature forms bridges not through construction, but through gentle patterns shaped over time. And there are rivers that weave close to forests during autumn when leaves fall steadily into the water. The river carries these colourful leaves downstream in slow, drifting patterns. Some leaves spin in small circles, others glide smoothly along the current. Their colours reflect across the surface in shades of gold, red and soft brown. This drift of autumn leaves creates a moving tapestry on the river and adds a gentle sense of seasonal change. Watching them float can feel peaceful, like witnessing the earth breathe out the last warm moments before winter arrives. As this quiet journey along the river comes to an end, let yourself rest in the feeling it has left within you. We have followed the water from its small beginnings to its broad and gentle stretches, through forests and meadows and stone corridors shaped by time. We have seen how rivers move with patience, how they change the land without force, how they carry memories of distant storms and ancient mountains, and how they bring life wherever they pass. The river has shown us that movement does not have to be hurried. It can be soft, it can be steady, it can be comforting. Notice how your breath feels now. Notice how your thoughts settle more easily, the way silt settles to the bottom of calm water. The mind drifts into a quieter place when it imagines the slow passage of a river. Every curve, every ripple, every soft reflection carries a sense of ease that naturally invites sleep. You can return to this feeling any time you need it. Just picture the slow water. Picture the way it bends through the land with quiet intention. Picture the way it holds the sky in its surface without effort. Rivers remind us that rest is not something we earn. It is something the body knows how to do when we give it space. So let yourself drift now. Let yourself ease into calm. Let the gentle weight of the day sink away like a stone disappearing beneath the surface. If your eyes are closing, let them. If your breath is slowing, follow it. There is nothing else to do, nothing else to hold. Thank you for spending this quiet time with the Sleepy Scientist. If this soft journey helped you relax, you're welcome to subscribe or return whenever you need a peaceful moment. For now, let the last thought fade. Let the river carry you into rest. And may your sleep tonight be deep and gentle, like water flowing toward the sea. Good night. If this soft journey helped you relax, you're welcome to subscribe or return whenever you need a peaceful moment. For now, let the last thought fade. Let the river carry you into rest. And may your sleep tonight be deep and gentle, like water flowing toward the sea. Good night.